Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another interesting, accurate podcast and video. My name is Okwe Mikwo, and today we have a very interesting conversation for you. But before we dive into it, I have with me
You
Adeni.
have you have with you Adeni, yes, Dakari's favorite guy on Dakari videos and podcasts. So yeah.
And then we have our interesting guest. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mr. Jide?
Okay, so Mr. Jide is reminds me of my grandfather. My name is
Ooh,
Jide Taiwo. You know,
bundled together.
first name Jide, last name
Okay.
Taiwo. But I found out that Jide Taiwo is a very, very popular name in Nigeria. None
It
of which
is.
has to do with me, and it's kind of like how I came up with a professional moniker for myself, the Jide Taiwo. So as to kind of like stand myself out. Because if I had $1 for every time I've heard, "Oh, are you the Jide Taiwo of real estate?" I would say, "No,
Yeah.
it's not that Jide Taiwo. This is
Those
the
are the
Jide
time.
Taiwo." So yeah, I'm Jide Taiwo.
Yeah. I was gonna ask that when we were talking to you, that do people mistake you for Jide Taiwo, because it's like there was a time in Nigeria that almost every building that was to let
That's right. That's
was
right.
Jide Taiwo.
And I'm shocked because I hear it a lot, and I'm like, dude, the Baba is almost 90 years old. It cannot be me. But I mean, it's a good conversation starter. It's helped me a lot
It's good.
because yeah,
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so we're talking about the Grammys. We know that the
right,
Grammys happened like, 3 weeks ago.
right.
But then again, one of the reason why we have Mr. Jide Taiwo here, do you want to introduce your background and what you do and how you got into music and all of this?
Right. So these days, I describe myself as a culture consultant because
Mm,
my work now is helping different organizations ranging from I've done the fintech, I've done, broadcast media, I've done live events to talk about culture as it applies to whatever it is that they are doing.
mhm.
Currently, the Nigerian pop culture appears to be very, very, popular amongst people from all parts of the world. And
Mhm.
I found out that a lot of people want to sort of like inculcate it in whatever they do. You see tech companies playing in the pop culture space, you see banks playing in the pop culture space. So my work
Yeah.
essentially now is to help them have these conversations better. And that is born from the fact that I worked in and around, you know, music and entertainment
Mhm.
almost the entirety of my career. I started out as an entertainment journalist
Mhm.
and then expanded into more mainstream journalism. I've worked in music streaming, I've worked in TV, I've
Mhm.
worked a little bit in radio, but
That's
most,
amazing.
I've kind of like had this very, folks that they call generalists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a generalist that uses, culture, music, and entertainment to have conversations and to create different things. I've written a couple of books. I've worked on a couple of Afrobeats documentaries. The most project we worked on was an arts exhibition, would you believe it, of 70
Wow.
years of Nigerian music. So I was co-curator on that project. So it's kind of like a very fine mix of different things, but music and
Mhm.
entertainment is what sort of ties everything together for me.
Wow. That's really good to that's really good to hear. I mean, like, it's amazing to see people that can actually work in amazing, different space and still, like, I can just really hear your wealth of knowledge
Yeah, it's
in
not
all of
plenty
these
like
different
that.
areas that you've actually worked in, and it's actually quite interesting
Oh,
to
thank you.
see. I feel like a lot of Nigerians don't really get the opportunity to work in that sort of space and different space for that matter. So you must
Yeah.
have an interesting.
I mean, I think I'm one of the lucky ones because
Yeah.
I'm a child of the 90s. I was born in the mid 80s, grew up in the
Yeah.
90s, and that was a fascinating time to grow up. I was telling a couple of younger friends of mine that I came up at an era that you needed to have a turntable and a boombox in your house. And
Yeah.
then by the time I was 16, 17, the internet was slowly creeping in into Nigeria.
Yeah.
My mom had a dial-up computer that you couldn't touch because it was just going to suck all the, Nitel,
Yeah. Data.
units at the time. And
Yeah.
then by the time I was 20, the internet was all over the place. So, and now that I'm a bit older, it's
Hmm.
almost it's streaming, it's real time, everything. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like shaped how I see the world and how this experience, like I live it. I remember the first time I heard a hip hop song,
Yeah.
right? Like I remember the very first time, and I'm still here. And, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I came up at a time that it was cool to listen to American hip hop. And now I
I
am, you can
know.
have a party all night without playing one
One,
foreign song.
and you touched on something right now that it's just that it's quite interesting because looking at how born in the mid 80s,
Right,
that means you've been in the thick of like the Nigerian music evolution in itself, from the
right,
cassettes to the
right,
turntables
right.
to now we have streaming platforms. I don't think anyone actually does CD and all of those
It's
things
incredible.
anymore.
Uh,
So
you
can
know,
you take us through your
yeah,
journey? How did you get started? Was it from your house, having just those turntables?
right,
And was that what really led you to become a media executive?
right.
And I really want to still hear that experience. What was it like listening to that first hip hop music? Was it on that the Walkman? I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
the.
so you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I
Yeah.
have an uncle who went off to college in the US in the early
Hmm.
80s. So by the time I was like 5 or 6, that he came back home, he wanted to do something for us, his nephews. And then he
Hmm.
brought me this yellow Sony Walkman.
Ooh.
And, that was the height of technology. He left
Yeah.
a tape in there for me. I forget what the title, what the artist was now, but I remember I've got the power. Didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this? But I
It's
think I lost
insane.
it shortly after. But
Yeah.
I grew up outside of Lagos. I grew up in Ibadan. And
Okay.
we had two TV stations and two radio stations. There was the Broadcast Corporation of Oyo State, BCOS, and NTA
BCO.
Ibadan. BCOS had a radio station, and then there was FRCN. And it was, I mean, this was the days of shortwave and medium wave on radio. So when I would come to Lagos to visit my cousins for the holidays, and they'll put on NTA 2 Channel 10, NTA 2 Channel 5, and NTA 10, I'll be like, so
Guys have
this,
lots of station.
do you understand? So this is happening to you guys. So it
Yeah.
kind of, having limited access to television. And then my mom and my grandmother would say, no, it's wrong for kids to watch TV at 4 o'clock. Now, TV used to start at 4 p.m. So they say, no, finish your homework, do whatever it is. You can watch TV like 6 or 7, and they'll be showing some boring, you know, adult
Yeah.
program. So I kind of like read more than I watched TV,
TV.
right?
Mm.
But I remember when I was in GSS2, again, somewhere around the early 90s,
Mhm.
I had these neighbors. There were 5 boys. The youngest
Ooh.
of them was 6 years older than I was. So
Oh,
their
wow.
exposure to life, they were in their
Was
late
bigger.
teens at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
had this house party, and then they played OPP by Naughty by Nature.
Oh.
And I lost my mind because
You're like, what is this?
what is this? What
Yeah.
is this? It also coincided with, OGBC, that the Ogun State broadcast station at that time had an FM dial that was not popular. And they used their FM dial to reach young people. And they
Oh,
played a lot
wow.
of hip hop. Yeah, that's where I discovered Junior and Pretty. That's where I discovered Daddy Shoki. It sort of seemed like the whole PP that I heard was
Yeah.
done in a Nigerian way, in pidgin English, in Yoruba, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's
Okay.
something to it. But I
Yeah.
think one of the most, perhaps the most defining element of my childhood was going up to school in GSS 2 or 3, and then walking by a vendor stand and seeing a magazine called Hip Hop World Magazine.
Mm.
Hip Hop World.
Hip Hop World
Ayo
Magazine.
Adimashaw.
Aya Animation. This was 1995.
Wow.
I remember that I blew my entire week's allowance on buying the magazine, because I think I got 100 naira per week, 20 naira every day. And I just poured over this magazine. I knew at
Mhm.
that point that whatever I did, I wanted to be in this space. I didn't know how it
Music
was going to
space.
happen,
Yeah.
but it seemed like something that I wanted to do. Fast forward many years, I've been fortunate to have a relationship with the animation himself, and I've
That's
seen how
amazing.
how you know just being driven, having crazy goals can be really helpful. Animation himself started out by making lyric books and then did a
Wow.
magazine. Yeah, he had two lyric books, at the time. So I didn't know how it was gonna happen, but I
Hmm.
knew I wanted to work in the media space.
Wow.
Also, I think I was sort of like a kind of like a brilliant kid. And if you went to school in Nigeria, a public school in Nigeria, they will assume that if you could speak English and you were kind of put together, you're automatically a science student. However, me myself till today, I'm very horrible at math. I
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
struggle with counting money. And my mom was like, "No, you're an art student. Just do the arts."
Hmm.
And I found out that I was really good at literature and English. I was good with the English language. I was good with all of these things. So I knew that heading off to university was most likely going to be the arts. I ended up
Yeah.
studying mass communication. And then,
Amazing.
I knew that, yeah, this was it for me. So that's kind of like
Mm.
been the trajectory. Again, I've been very
Yeah.
fortunate to work in
Exactly.
spaces that align with things that I want to do myself.
I
It
was
makes,
I was
yeah,
about to I was about to ask that question, that how did your parents allow you to go into the music space? But I'm glad you already touched on
yeah.
it.
I
Like
mean, my mom,
with the
my
mass
mom had
comm,
the,
so that
yeah, my mom
yeah.
had the presence of mind
Mm.
to be able to identify the skills that I had, things that
Yeah.
I was. So I had certain skills, and then I was interested in things that needed those skills. She
Mm.
used to tell me back then, doesn't matter what you study in school. That's why they call it a discipline. You have to have the
Mm.
discipline to stay in school for 4 years, 5 years, however long it is, heading for whatever certification that you need. And to her,
Wow.
that was more important than whatever the course you studied was. So
Wow. Thank you,
it's
mommy.
yeah, I mean, yeah, even though now she's old and I still
Yeah.
just with her just to get her feel on things, not because I want to automatically agree with her, but we just have
The
that thing.
insights. Yeah.
Yes, yes, so that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah, well, see, like, I like how you're giving us that very, very rich background of
Right.
how you came from the 80s to the 90s. So it just shows that you're culturally vested in the Nigerian entertainment scene, or let me say music, because I came across one of your tweets from 2024. People these days, and if we get to talk about this, maybe it'll be good. All
Right.
this Davido fan, Wizkid
Right.
fan, Burna Boy, all that, and you talked about how there's been beef historically
Oh yeah.
from the days of Clinton and
Yes, barista.
Ayinde. So
Right.
it just shows you go way back and you understand this thing. But just looking at it and talking about music in Nigeria, the evolution,
Yes.
people, I used to have these conversations with like older people, my parents, talking about how, oh, the music we listen to does not
Mm.
have any value, things like
Right.
that. We all of all those conversations. How do you think we can preserve the culture from timeless classics? One that
Mm.
I listened to a few days ago was The Man, His Son, and His Horse.
Oh, this is obey.
Obey. Ebenezer Obey.
Right.
Kete
You know,
kete.
you're listening to
Yes.
that song, you're
Yeah.
learning things that are even applicable. Like, you can't satisfy everybody.
Right.
and I'm sure we have some songs in our generation that we've heard, but how do you think we can preserve those timeless sounds and
Mm.
integrate it into the new sound that we have right now?
So, um, my one creed, the one ill that I've refused to come down from
Mm-hmm.
is that Afrobeats is only a tiny part of African music,
Mm.
Nigerian music. There are so many music genres, there are so many classics that we've not even paid attention to because everybody is looking to Afrobeats and wants to be Davido Wizkid. There's nothing
Wizkid.
wrong with that, right? But there's 200 million of us Nigerians. Not everybody is going to, kind of like be all over Afrobeats.
Mm-hmm.
However, Afrobeats to me is an evolution of many things of our indigenous genres. It means to me that those indigenous genres are important. And
Yeah.
a quick example I like to give to people is I think Europe and America are running out of stories because there's been like seven Supermans. They are always remaking Spider-Man, Batman, always doing these stories. We've not even begun to tell the
Mm,
huge volume of stories that are inherent in us as Nigerians, as Africans. So I think we need to find a way to appreciate what it is that is our culture. And that's when we can care about the music of Nigeria, of Africa, of these classics. Again, I'm not a hater. I like what Tems, for instance, did with Love Me Jeje.
Yeah.
But have you listened to Jafumi by King Sonny Ade and heard the strings on the guitar?
Mm.
Have you listened to a Haruna Ishola with a rhythmic percussion that will just make you lose your mind, right? And if you listen to all the greatest modern composers, right? Kanye West, Dr. Dre, all of them, there's a way that they flip classics into something new in itself. I
true.
remember watching Wyclef Jean, and he said when Killing Me Softly sold 10 million units, it hit him that they just made a whole lot of money for somebody that owned that publishing.
The
And then
original.
he did something that Rihanna and DJ Khaled did many years later. I think damn near 20 years later. So for him, it was important for him to create something that will have value years later on. I think for us as Nigerians and for us as Africans, it's important for us to be inspired by these classics,
Yeah.
even if we want to create something new, if we want to cover them. Whitney Houston was not the first person to do what's that
I will always love you.
I will always love you. But when Dolly Parton did it, it was mind blowing. Whitney took it to another level. It means that it can be done. So we can make covers, we can make
Mm.
remixes, we can make entirely new sounds, new from the things that we have. But it's important for us to first understand, though, that
Mm.
we have a culture that is rich, that is extensive, and what the things we can do to it with it is just mind blowing.
Yeah. You said something now that I'm trying to see how I can bring it up. So it's pretty much like you have those timeless classics. You
Right.
use the example, Love Me JJ. I'm sure there are people in the like younger generation who had never ever heard of the OG
That's right.
Love Me JJ.
That's right.
Pardon?
I
Yeah,
said
they
that's right.
haven't.
I'm agreeing with you.
But listening to Thames' own makes them go and find that and be
Right.
like, oh, wow, this song was
It's
they
not
showed
bad. Yeah.
and Jackie Bello in the video and
Mm-hmm.
everything. So it helps to bring those people to the forefront also.
That's right.
And that's a way that they can also get like the cultural. I'm not sure if Love Me JJ has any cultural value, Sha, but the
The Thames one or the Shea Shodi one.
Both.
But yes, it does. You'll be shocked. Again, if you listen to Shea Shodimu's rap back then, it's not a sophisticated delivery, right? and listen to what rappers do now, and you
Yeah.
can thread the evolution, the stylistic evolution of music, of
Yeah.
delivery. Do you get what I mean? So yes, in terms of cultural impact, not every song is going to be that one that should fall down in the middle of Third Mainland Bridge and raise your hands to the heavens. But at the very least, and again, to give an example of Naira Marley, for example, personally, me as Jide, I don't enjoy Naira Marley song. It's not for me.
Same here.
But listening to him shows me in HD the current times that we live in Nigeria,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
things that young people hold dearly. I
Mm-hmm.
often fall into the rabbit hole of TikTok, and I'm shocked at the bold way in which things that our generation regarded as vices, if you smoked, you're probably hiding it from your parents. People are smoking on camera and broadcasting it.
Yeah.
So if you listen to a Naira Marley and is rapping about, or whatever it is, wailing about his tendencies to use marijuana, all the pills that is popping, he's not speaking in isolation. There's a street,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to put them on blast now, but
Mhm.
I've been on a street in Lekki, in a very plush area of Lekki, and somebody just pulled out to me, "Ah, Baba, what do you need? Off menu." And I'm like, "What's off menu?" And he brought out an array of pills.
Oh, wow.
You can buy cocaine in Lagos for as low as 30K this evening as we speak. So
Yeah.
if somebody is telling you that I'm smoking weed and my girlfriend is using cocaine, it's not being facetious. It's happening.
It's a
I
reality.
digress.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another. Maybe we'll come another topic and talk
Right?
about like, the impact of music
Right?
on societal ills and things. But there was something you talked about prior, and you talked about the U.S. and the West in general,
Yeah.
and we know we had about the Grammys happening a few years ago. And shout
Mm.
out to people who won awards. Tems, really happy for her, and every other person that won things. But for Nigerian and African music, because I don't want to go say
Mm.
specifically Afrobeats, you said something very vital that Nigerian music is bigger than Afrobeats. There's more. Or, I mean, I hope I'm not going to get
I
called
mean,
out.
but it's fine if you want to talk about Afrobeats. Afrobeats is the biggest genre today.
It's the biggest
Yeah.
genre.
Yeah.
So, do we need validation from platforms like the Grammys or even the West for the music that we're creating in Nigeria and Africa as a whole?
So I think to me it's a catch 22, right?
Hmm.
Mm,
Do we need the validation? No. I think we
Hmm.
should be bold enough to do whatever we want to do without
Yeah.
seeking gratification from whatever. However, there are levels to this, right? And today, as we speak, the Grammys is still the pinnacle of musical excellence. However, you feel about it, you know, Jay-Z
Yeah.
has vexed and vexed and vexed and vexed, but he'll show up, right? The last year he gave a speech about on behalf of his wife that no, how can
mm,
she be the most, you know, honored Grammy artist and then she doesn't have album of the year and then the following year she received the album of the year. Do you get what I mean? So for people at that height, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Kendrick Lamar, the Grammys is still it. So it is gratifying to
Hmm.
see that our music is entering those spaces. Again, I'm old enough to remember when Baba Keke and Dion used to pay them by themselves. Sometimes
To
they
attend.
don't access the arena, you know.
They're always on the
They're
backstage.
always
I
at the
remember.
backstage. Oh no, backstage.
outside.
Backstage was
It
later on. In the beginning, it was parking lots and the streets
was
of
just
LA. They schooled in LA, so they knew their way around. And then eventually they got backstage, and then they could access their way in. This has happened in only 20 years. It's happened in only 20 years. So, in as much as I don't think we need that gratification, I mean, that validation, it's heartwarming to see our music get to these spaces. It now leads us to a second question. How do we build African music in a way that it is self-sustaining, that you
Yeah.
don't necessarily need to have the Grammys. Again, if you look at the biggest stars in Nigeria now, off the top of my head, Burna Boy, Wizkid, Davido, Tems, Rema, Ashake,
That's okay.
at least the top 5 to 7 are signed
Yes,
to
star.
either international record labels or
Yeah, yeah,
distribution
Empire.
or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? It suggests to me that these metrics will matter to whatever international company that they are signed to, because
Mm,
that's how they too are going to, raise whatever amounts of money they are spending on him. It's still, it's a hypothesis in my head that is not fully fleshed out, but I
yeah.
know that the top Nigerian Afrobeat acts signed to foreign labels
Mm,
will need a validation of the Grammys, of the BET, whatever it is.
mm. So this actually leads me to the next question, because you've talked about this, this validation. You've talked about you know, the eddies is from hip hop world
Yes,
that actually built into the eddies, and we've also seen how the eddies in itself
yes,
years after years. I mean, it started as our own Grammys, right?
right.
And but I just feel like it's not really improved
Mm.
as it should. But if you actually had the power to change one thing in all of these shows, which would you prefer to really represent us? Is it the Grammys or the Eddies to better represent African music? You know, and what should it be, and why do you think they should? Because for me, been rooting for the Eddies for like the longest
Right.
of time, but I just feel like year after year they let us down. I don't know. So if you were to compare both of them, which would you think would represent us better in the
Uh,
music space? Yeah.
so I have an alternate view in
Mm,
that
okay.
I don't think it's a zero sum game. I don't think it's either or.
Okay.
To me, I think it's and. Again, the Grammys had the 65th edition, so that means they've
Yeah.
been around for about 70 years thereabouts.
Yeah.
So they've
Yeah.
had a long time to evolve and become this cultural force that they
Yeah.
are. And again, it's an academy. It's made up of board members, people who don't necessarily listen to African music are
Mm,
introduced to African music when the Grammys come around and there are African acts in the lineup. So it's good on that side. For the headies, um, I'm a bit sympathetic towards the headies. And for full disclosure, I know the man, but I don't
yeah.
work
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sympathetic because I know that whatever it is, okay, so we were talking earlier, and it's a common joke on Twitter that, and it's said in pidgin, if they explain Nigeria give you and you understand, that means you have a problem. You
Hmm.
know, Nigeria is a peculiar place, and things that should be the norm, you have to struggle for. Do you get what I mean? So with the headies, I think the challenge of the headies is, and this is speaking as me, is
Mm-hmm.
because it's still pretty much a private enterprise. Animal Sharon has to go out
Mm-hmm.
and look for the funds to put the headies together, right? It's not
Yeah.
like there's a board. It's not like there's an entry fee for artists to list their projects, for consideration. All of the things that we do for the Grammys, we don't do it for the headies. So
Yeah.
So, in that regard, I'm sympathetic towards his plight because it's hard work. I know that he has to buy out a hotel for a number of days leading up to the
Wow.
headies. It's coming out of his pocket, or if he can raise
Wow.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
So, it's tough on that side. But I also think that the success of Afrobeats in the last 7 years or thereabouts has kind of like seduced us into thinking that our music industry is there yet. It's not.
Hmm.
It's not. You'll be hard pressed to find 5,000 people to buy a 20K ticket for person X's show. It's tough. So you see that all of these concerts that we have are driven by sponsorship.
Yeah.
So everybody looks for a brand. There's an alcoholic beverage that needs something something. There's a telco that needs something something. They put money down. So
mm,
in that regard, it's not really. It's no longer driven by the culture itself. It's driven by sponsorship. It's driven by brands. That's not
wow.
how the armies got to where they are. And if you look at how many awards platforms have come and gone in Nigeria in the last 20 years, you see that it's tough. Some of Ayanima Shawun's contemporaries have tried it. Even MTV, that is owned by global conglomerates, did MTV Mama a few years and just rested it. It suggests to me that, do you
You're
understand?
very
They have more
correct.
money
Yeah.
than Ayanima Shawn. But again, that does not
Mm,
preclude the need to decentralize it, which to me I think
mm,
is the issue. It
mm,
needs to move away from being solely a single person's enterprise into becoming a cultural thing. But I'm still going to put the blame at the feet of our artists. Every one of the big shots now
mm,
somehow went through the Headies pipeline. And then
Yeah.
boom, they are big internationally and they don't care anymore. That's not the people that we are trying to be, that's not how they
mm,
built their own cultural, platforms.
yeah.
So we need to lose, in the words of Fela, that colonial mentality. I'm
Mm,
shocked at, and again, look at our big stars. When was the last time you saw them have an interview with Nigerian media? Don't worry, I'll wait. Almost never.
mm,
Almost never. But you see them get on Breakfast Club, you see them
So
on this international podcast, and they are completely different. Burna Boy, for whatever reason, appears standoffish when he's in Nigeria. But you see him have conversations abroad, and it's funny. It's
yeah.
charismatic. Do you get what I mean? So I don't know what the issue is, but whatever problem we have as Nigerians, nobody's coming to save us. And I think
Hmm.
our biggest stars, yes, we are happy for the success, but they
Yeah.
also owe the system that make them. And I don't think they're
Exactly.
there yet. So it's a potpourri of many things.
yeah. It's interesting that you say that you've done like a mix of all the various issues that the industry
Working
is
the
facing,
music. Yeah.
and probably preferring solutions or solutions where it's kind of like we don't know where we're going to get those solutions yet, but somehow we need to
Yeah.
get there. But when we're speaking about that, we're, like you said, we're seeing the evolution of let's for this topic, let's just stick to Afrobeats.
Yes, yes, that's fine.
Let's We're seeing how Afrobeats is evolving. Then everybody goes on.
Hmm.
Um, you can put your music on Apple Music, and boom, you've blown.
That's right.
Things like good example is Charlie Poppy for whoever likes him or who doesn't like it. But I'm like, where did this guy even come from?
Yes,
And
sir.
it's everywhere. It's
Hmm.
just putting music out there little by little. But then you see so many of all these young artists. Like, there's some guy I recently found out, Eriga,
Mm,
and there's so many interesting acts that are just
right.
out there. How do you think these young artists or these new artists do you see their potential, and how can they even break into the international markets? Like we've seen, top three, top
Mm.
five, seven break into the markets in recent years.
One, they have to be authentic to their true selves. You
Okay.
know, nobody is checking for you if you're a Drake wannabe from Lagos.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. You're not going
Mm,
to out rap ASAP Yams or whoever it is or Kendrick Lamar. It's unlikely that you're going to get there. And the rest of the world checking for our music want to hear something different. They want to feel the pulse of us
mm,
Nigerians. So if we lose that authenticity in the name of trying to get that international recognition, it's pointless because why am I paying X amount? I worked in the space when Empire, for instance, arrived in Nigeria,
mm.
and I know how many people was trying to get through to
Their
Empire.
deals.
But
Mm,
Empire wanted something different, and you can tell in the various artists that they work with: Olamide, Fireboy, Ashake. people who have distinctively Nigerian
Mm.
sounds. Do
Yeah.
you get what I mean? So it suggests to me that what Empire is looking for, in the words of Rugged Man, is not giddy me, giddy me, giddy me, giddy. We have to be that authentic. But then, being authentic and being successful, do we
Mm.
need international spotlights? If I'm able to sell 100,000 units by myself in Nigeria, if I'm able to have a concert twice a year of 5,000 people each, you know, do I need to hustle for that international appeal when it's largely out of our hands? No matter how Eriga raps, is out of his hands. He can't do anything to Rock Nation to sign him, you know.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just a waste of time. There's again, that's because I think that
Mm.
whatever ills plagues Nigerian entertainment, it's a symptom of our ailing country. So if I cannot sell out 10,000 capacity, Drake has been selling out. I mean, that's Drake though in Australia, but you can move around a bit. In Nigeria, where are you going to? Outside of Lagos, where else is popping?
It's
You know,
popping. Mm.
some brands tried by moving around, but again, it was for their brands. So if any artist wants to cut out to that international scene, I think you have to be authentic. And outside of Burna Boy, okay, so Burna Boy, David, Wizkid, those are the old cats, Abi. But when people
Yeah.
look at Ashake and Tems, their success is never going to be cloned because it's an anomaly. It doesn't happen like that. Tems had her first Grammy without having an album yet. It's never going to happen. You cannot study Tems and say, okay, this was what she did. That
Halfway.
let do you understand? There are people like that. There are outliers like that. But for the rest of us that are in the trenches, is hard work, is consistent work, and just staying true to ourselves. So that means that when the going gets tough,
Tough. Mm.
we don't hands off and say, I'm not doing it again. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
think. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That,
That's really that's a very interesting how will I say, just very, very deep in terms of, all of these artists. And so now, how do you think we can, so for example, we've actually seen a lot of collaborations, and you talked about,
Right.
using terms as an example, that hasn't really done those sort of like as more collaborations, right, with
Mm.
international artists as much. And we've really seen artists like Burna Boy and Ed Sheeran,
Yeah.
Ashake with Travis Scott, and I think Tems with Drake, right?
Yeah.
But how do you think this partnership would actually, contribute to like the diversity and the growth of Afrobeat or Nigerian music in, of global music?
Mm.
Like, how can our diversity and growth of global music and for other artists that are not well known, as it were, how do you think they can sort of secure, like, just secure this kind of collaborations
Mm.
in the future?
So that's why, again, I'm not a hater. You I'm not a hater.
I really like your honesty. To be
Right.
honest,
I'm
like, I
not a
really like
hater.
how you're
I
so direct.
I love how these folks have these international collaborations.
Yeah.
So for artists that desire that kind of thing, it means that they have to work their way there, right? Those conversations are not going to happen artist to artist. You probably have a management consultant that is making these calls on your behalf, pitching on your behalf.
Mm.
So artists that want to get to that level, they need to work their way there. Now, where the problem is now is artists that are not on that level typically do everything by themselves.
Mm.
You find out that somebody is signed to a label, and in 2 years they're like, no, I'm not doing it again. It's collecting all my money. And that's why you see some people kind of like plateau because they've not taken the time, needed to move from one level to the other. So if you cannot handle a management deal, in Lagos and Port Harcourt now, how are you going to get Island or UMG or whoever it is to make this calls on your behalf? So there's a need for artist development. There's a need for a lot of education, and I don't mean people going back to sitting down in conventional classrooms, but people
Yeah.
need to be educated on what the music industry requires and what you need to do to get X, Y, Z. There are
Mentorship.
artists who don't look for that international collaboration, and they are content with wherever their music is. Johnny
Yeah.
Drill has kind of like proved himself to be a niche artist. He's not a Wizkid, he's not a Burna Boy, but he
Yeah.
has a core fan base that
It
every
does.
other month he can sell out 3, 4 thousand, and then start to scale small, small, small like that.
It does.
So if
And they're loyal fans.
and they're loyal fans. So
Very loyal.
artists need to take time to
Yeah.
develop that relationship and build these communities,
Mm,
and then find people that can make those introductions. It's not going to happen
mm,
by itself. You're not going to land an Ed Sheeran or a Stormzy or a Drake or nothing just by saying, "Oh, I like your music." Never gonna happen. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? Spotify. I was having this conversation yesterday. Spotify takes in 150,000 new songs every day. Chances
That's
it
insane.
is insane. So nobody's just going to discover your music by themselves. There needs to be concerted efforts made
Yeah.
towards exposing people to your music, having
Mm,
relationships, having management deals, and it comes from being not being greedy. So if you want 100% of your earnings and you don't want to share 30, 40% with a management that can take you to the next level, then you're probably going to be playing in small leagues. Do you get what I mean? So everybody has to
mm,
be ambitious, and being ambitious means that you're going to have a proper business plan to say, this is what I want for myself. And in doing that, they are going to see what is required to get through each of the steps.
Or just be a troublemaker like South Africa and go to London and
Abi,
like Zazu.
Zazu. I mean, do you get what I
I
mean?
just scream, I
Yeah.
just
So you actually talked about something now with Spotify and how their new music and things like that, and that takes me to the streaming platform with Apple
Right.
Music and all of those YouTube Music.
Mm-hmm.
So we've really seen how streaming has completely transformed how music is consumed globally. I
Right.
mean, I was talking to my husband few days back, and we're like, back in those days where we had 5 minutes music, audio, 6 minute, like the lyrics, it was intense, it was there, but now we
scream.
have you know now we have one 1 minute,
Yeah.
and really less like that. But how not just even talking about how it has shaped in that sort of sense, but how has streaming reshaped the opportunities and like revenues models for Nigerian artists, and what do you think like is the next for digital platforms in Africa?
Whew. So they've helped in shaping um, distribution or
Mm-hmm.
getting the music across board. Um, Revenue, I'm not so sure, and I'll explain why.
Mm. Okay.
Um, the music streaming platforms have been phenomenal in getting the music out. Again, it's not because they wanted to; it was the Internet of Things. So,
IoT, yeah.
do you understand? Now,
Yeah.
film studios needed to produce maybe 1 or 2 films per year. Now on Netflix, you can get an infinite amount of new content on a yearly
Yeah,
basis.
it's crazy.
So it's the Internet of Things. Music streaming platforms have now helped in that for Nigeria in particular, sort of
Mm-hmm.
like solve the Alaba problem, you know,
Mm.
because why would I need to take my music to Alaba when you can play it on the go? So it's
Mm.
helped immensely in that regard. It's made music more accessible. It's made the barrier of entry to very, very low. You can record the music and put it on tonight, as opposed to back then that the early guys really tried. But be that as it may, um, it's shown that revenue can be made, but I don't think that streaming revenue in itself is sufficient
Yeah.
because, and again, it's not a peculiar problem to Nigeria. If you see Snoop Dogg talk about it, or Master P, or say when
Oh,
Taylor
okay.
Swift was having that battle with her former manager and all of that,
Manage. Yeah.
you know,
Mm,
you are going to find the biggest artists have huge, huge streams. But
mm,
for somebody that is not on that level, how much money can you realistically make from streaming? I've
mm.
worked in a streaming platform before, and I know, what the range is. Again,
Yeah.
it's different in Nigeria because the calculation is sort of like different. The advertising revenue that is available to streaming platforms is not the same. If you are getting $10, as a matter of fact, Spotify is 10.99 in the US. Am I correct? Around that, between
Yeah.
$10 and $15. Sometimes I think that whatever it is, $10 in Lagos, Nigeria is 17,000 naira. Chances are that I'm not going to pay 17,000 naira to listen to music, and then you find out that what these platforms can pay out,
Mm,
to their artists that are local is not as
yeah.
much as what you get for the biggest artists. So I think maybe about
Mm,
under $3,000 for a million streams.
you're
You know,
correct. Mm,
it's tough. But what it does, it's like it provides a proof to either distribution labels that artists want to work with or brands that they want to work with and say, oh, I have listeners in X amount of cities in Nigeria. I have this many followers. And that can suggest to brands that, well, this person has the number that we can play with, right? But I think streaming is it's a way. It shouldn't be the end goal. If you have
mm-hmm,
10 million streams, what does that mean? Does that translate to 10,000 ticket sales? As we've seen,
mm,
not necessarily,
yeah.
And again, look at, and Burna Boy is the most perfect example for this thing. All the money that Burna Boy is making now that everybody's shouting is not from streams, oh, is
It's from
from
his
going out
concert.
there and performing at concerts, doing
Yes.
tours, selling it out night to night. It's not going
Yes.
to happen if somebody is just stream my music, tap 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 tap. Thank you for the cap, thank you for the lion. It's not going to work like that. People have people have to step out of their rooms, and do the hard work. The work is not sexy. When Bonner or Wiz or David or Tems, when they are traveling and showing up, it's not sexy. There are days that they wake up and they don't want to do it, but they just move ass. Excuse my French. So for these artists that want to get to that level, it's not enough to be ambitious from your room. You've got to do the creative work, and then you have to do the non-creative, unsexy work of moving to
Mm,
those spaces.
mm,
That's how I see it.
Yeah, this thing that you talked about streaming, I have a little bit of insight on it. So my younger
Right.
brother, he has not blown yet too.
You will blow. Don't worry.
So, but he was telling us one time, like, oh, I have this number of streams on Apple Music, this one, that one.
Mm.
And we're like, so what's it passion now? Bring money.
Ah.
Like $150.
Yes.
I said, okay, what you
Yes.
do?
mm,
Yes. You know.
So, so it's that I like you really hit the nail on the head now.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we're
Right.
speaking about all this, I'm going to ask this question in two ways. The first
Right.
question is: talk about your background and what you're currently doing. Would you call yourself a music executive?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay,
No, I wouldn't because again, my work is adjacent to music.
to
There
music,
are
right?
there are execs, and then so maybe it's from a bad experience. I tried to manage an artist one time, and I found out that God did not bless me with the patience required to be with artists. You know, I had an artist, so this was back in the day. That wanted to release new music, and I said, you know what, you need new photographs, and it took me about 3 days to convince him that he needed new photos. And I
Mm.
understand that, creatives can have that eccentricity. But me myself, my own is in my body. So it's not for me. It's not for me. So I don't look at myself as music executive. Nah, I'm probably not going to chase an artist or chase a deal. However, we can use the music for different other things.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
so with that being
Yeah.
said, if you were to identify 5 music execs in
Right.
Nigeria and say what do we have to do to make this Afrobeats bigger than what it is? Some issues that we see that are out there, piracy, funding. You've touched on some of them.
Mm,
If you don't want to call out people, we
mm,
understand, or shout out or anything, but if you wanted to,
mm,
these are the executives that would bring together, and this is what we would create a war room out of.
mm,
And to help us, if it's like, say, something urgent, this is, we're going to war and we need to sort this out.
Yeah.
Who will be your Avengers? Or
mm.
what's
So you're right in that I may not want to call out people, again, because some of them I know from work, but I can tell you that it will be a mixture of creatives
yeah.
in like folks like a Don Jazzy, right?
Mm,
It's going to need uh, people like Bezel who work, you know,
right.
they work in management and they work in live experiences. It's also going to need people that are their work is unsexy,
Mm,
managers, lawyers, business
Mm.
development people that can spot opportunities and craft,
Yeah.
you know, as they say now, craft narratives to reach, those things. But for me, I think the single biggest issue that is like the hydra-headed monster
Mm-hmm.
is funding.
mm.
We don't have enough
Mm.
money.
Yeah.
Just yesterday. Okay, can you guys still hear me though?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I saw that the internet went off for a brief moment. Okay, so just yesterday, I saw that Live Nation is partnering with Drake to create an arena of sorts in Ontario.
Mm. Oh wow.
To me, I think those are conversations that our biggest acts should be having. Yes, we
Mm.
love your hamburger and your restaurant and your crypto coins and the merch that you're trying to do,
Mm.
but we need more lasting issues. If you've been to a hotel, you know that a hotel was not meant for concerts. Each
You're
time I'm in a
correct.
hotel for a concert, I just pray that God, please just help me to get up. It wasn't built for that. Like you say a Wembley,
Packing and all of those
you know,
things.
parking is not even the issue. It's the arena itself.
Arena.
There's just one line. The entrance and the exits, they are on one wall like that. So people come in and exit in the same way. But the funding that we need is in building real structures that can that can protect or ensure that the music is not just a fleeting moment. My biggest fear is that Afrobeat is a fleeting moment, is a phase, because
Mm.
everything that we are relying on now is from external sources. The funding is from external sources. The tours are from external sources.
Wow.
The collaborations are from external sources. The day they lose interest is gone. Yeah, we are
Wow.
back in 2000.
Do you know this is sad because my next question was going to be something, but sorry, continue.
Yes. So I think the biggest issue that we have and funding, not just in terms of what artists make, funding in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what the ecosystem can generate now. Now,
Mm.
if you tell Empire to do a 30 city tour in Nigeria now, where are they going to go? They are going to
Mm.
play in Ogbemudia Stadium, Benin. They are going to play like how many spaces do we have? And that's just one of them. In terms of building indigenous record labels that can go into the trenches and discover new stars, who is doing that? How much of that are we doing? You know,
Mm.
the media that can compare with the billboards or GQ or whatever it is, are we building them? I can't remember the biggest, and people are really trying, to be honest, and this is not to knock anybody's hustle. But
But
do
it's
we
Mm.
have,
also
again, that's why you probably not see Wizkid in a Nigerian radio station, right? Because it's cool with BBC, it's cool with Kiss FM. Not just him, that they're set, you know. Ira Star sat with a really popular podcast in
Yeah,
Nigeria,
I
and
said what I said.
it's a big deal because that hasn't been done in a really long time. Do you get what I
Mm.
mean? So we need to build all of these things. Jay-Z built Tidal. The disgraced Puff Daddy built Revolt at
Okay.
some point. Nas
Internet.
did Mass Appeal. You have Drake working with Live Nation and a lot
Yeah,
Yeah.
of things like that. So we need to build different elements of the music ecosystem so that
yeah,
the goal would not just be make music, blow, travel abroad.
and
It's
then
sort
travel
of like what we
abroad.
see with sports. You know,
Mm.
people play football with the sole intention of getting signed in Europe. It doesn't
Internationally,
matter if it's Belarus or Czech Republic. What they just want to get out
just
because
jackpot, just leave.
exactly we
Wow,
haven't built that local capacity, and it's really important
wow.
that we do.
That's crazy. Because to be honest, my you sort of answered the last question, which is in 5 years, does Afrobeats own the mainstream, or the mainstream finally own its debt to Afrobeats? Because seeing that we have all of these issues with lack of investors and people just really collaborating and supporting the funding in itself, right?
Yeah.
So do you think Afrobeats, the future is not as bright as we think
Um.
it's going to own the mainstream, or
I mean, if we're looking at it in 5 years,
mm,
yeah, we're good. We're still in a good space. The world is still very excited. They want to hear more. They really can get more, and
yeah,
Yeah.
Nigeria is a bottomless pit. We have it. It's
talent, yeah.
plenty. So I think in 5 years will be good. But where the danger lies is that we are just creating for export.
Mm,
You know, and that's my concern. Again, last this past December, I was sort of mollified in that a lot of these guys were around for the Christmas period because, as they say, the lamba is here. There's
yeah,
there's a certain flavor that you get from being around here. So as long as we still have that going, we're sure that we can get something fresh to offer the world. So in
mm,
5 years, so I don't think it's so much mainstream as continued incursion into the world. Again, it will be difficult for us to break into the mainstream with only a handful of artists. So right now we have Big Four, I mean Big Five, Wiz, Burna, Tems, Ashake, Rema, and some
Aista,
extent Arista.
yeah,
That's not enough to take over the mainstream. We
yeah,
need like 20 more,
Mm-hmm.
and if we're able, and for me, I can't think of the next set other those guys. Everybody
hmm,
else is at a far distance from them.
hmm,
It's almost like when people compare Sheyi vibes to Ashake. Yeah, they might be similar, but there's a gulf,
yeah,
separating where they are. So it's
yeah,
important for us to churn out more stars, and then we can think of, taking over the mainstream. But again, we're in a good space. Everybody's excited. I was asking the Ayanima Shaun and
hmm,
if you're Moribe again at another conversation, like, you guys are older than I am. You've had more investment in this business than I have. I don't have any, but they've spent more time.
yeah,
How do you still get excited, you know, about doing operating in these things? And you know, it says to me that the folks like those are still excited about it. As much as people feel about the headies, each time the headies come up in the news, you see the very, very passionate reactions from people, either for or against. Sometimes when
yeah,
it is against, do you get what I mean? So it tells me that we have, you know, an endless pool of talent.
hmm,
We
yeah,
have an enormous amount of drive and passion, and the world still wants to hear what we have to say. And for me, once we can get those going, yeah, we'll keep churning out more stars, but we need to do that very expeditiously. We can't just rely on 7 or 8 stars to take over the global mainstream.
yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. This has been very, 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 very intense.
Wow.
I know. And and it's actually quite amazing,
Right.
with your wealth of knowledge and how
I
you've
try.
been super, super kind to, take your time to explain all of
No,
this.
no, no. It's
And
it's good that
and
you.
yeah. And Nee wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please.
Nee, can you hear us? Or okay, I think
Do
it's
you have the
gone.
question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to just
Yeah.
ask about politics and music.
Right.
What do you think? Do you think because with how you're really talking, like all of these shows,
Yeah.
maybe if the government is very also invested in all of this, do you think that would
Yeah. So how we describe it in Nigeria is that government has to create an enabling environment.
okay, so
Me.
do you want to ask the question again?
Yeah.
Just so
Oh,
you
oh,
un-
had you asked the
I
question?
just did, it's not my
Oh yeah, you
question, so
ask by
I just
yourself.
asked, so you can ask for yourself. Let's see.
No, so because you said you when you talked about like societal ills
Right.
and like I'm just trying to tally because what we do at Accurate, what Accurate as a whole is curating data and it
Right.
really stems from political
Yeah.
information, what's happening politically wise. How do you think music influences politics and governance? Maybe let's just leave it like broad and top level.
I think it's actually the other way around in that
Mhm.
politics and governance, influences the music. When Olamide told you that I'm at home in Bodilon, he wasn't joking. You know, that's how deep his connections are. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like for me the other way around. But again, I was on a panel a couple of days ago, and what I said was it's scary when people say they are not interested in policy and governance, right?
Hmm.
Because policy and governance are interested in you.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
every voter that refused to vote, there's the opportunity for an unscrupulous politician to use your slot, so to speak. So it's not enough for us to be standoffish. Again, my own mantra is nobody is coming to save us, right?
Yeah.
Um, we saw that Babangida, one of the most infamous Nigerian leaders, had a book launch and everybody was there.
It's
Raised
insane.
17 billion in a few hours, towards his presidential library. So nobody is coming to save us. But what I've also seen is that they cannot shut us all up at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And little by little, it's going to take a lot of hard work. We are going to have that voice to make demands. We've seen, yes, it's not. I know that a lot of people were dissatisfied with the last election cycle in Nigeria, but you cannot fix everything that has happened to Nigeria in one election cycle. We
Yes.
try, and then next cycle we try again, and then we give, we pull, we do that. But by and large, again, for the first time in Nigeria's history, we have now a ministry dedicated to the creative arts or the creative economy.
Wow.
Headed by Minister Husawa, right? And it suggests to me that it can be done, right? So how do we ensure that whoever is president in 4 years or 8 years or 6 years, whenever it is, does not scrap the ministry?
Hmm.
You know, so it's if we care about our respective industries, particularly entertainment and music, it's
Yeah.
important that we play in politics, we play in governance for whatever reason. Because at the end of the day, they will tell you that I don't know now. Again, I visited Aso Rock one time, and being there, it occurred to me that these people are in another world completely. They are physically different. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's physically. Even mentally, they are completely detached from the realities of the common person, right? But we need to have people that can speak for us in those spaces. Now, Obia Sika, who is one of the most iconic music execs Nigeria has ever seen, is currently the DG of the National Council of Arts and Culture. It means quite a lot for me because this is somebody that knows the pain points that the creative industry has. Now that you're in those rooms, we rely on you to speak on our behalf, and we need to do it across board. So, in as much as yes, the music governance now influences the music more than music influences governance.
Bonus, yeah.
Because if they've called you to come and sing at a national gala, chances
Mhm.
that you are going to speak against them in your music is sort of like kind of low. And that's why you
Yeah.
see a lot of time that people seem to be disappointed. You cannot be disappointed. Burna Boy, who, you know, talks really loudly, at least on social media, about societal ills, was given land and Kenikon in Port Harcourt by a governor that was not very popular outside of his state, and people have their thoughts about him. But he collected, you know. Davido's uncle is governor. Davido aside, Davido is a fantastic Kenikon. His uncle, to me, has not been a fantastic governor,
Governor. Mm.
but he's out there. So we need to just not, and again, that's the hard part of nation building. Is tiring, is exhausting, is thankless, but it has to be done. Not everybody. Each time that the immigration data comes out from Europe and America, and we see that I don't think, how many million are we Nigerians in America? Are we up
I
to
don't
5?
know. I
Uh,
don't know those. I don't have those
do you understand?
standards.
I suspect that is not up to a million. So let's peg it
I don't
at a
think
million. Do you
true.
understand?
Yeah.
So let's say we have 1 million Nigerians in the US, 200 million more at home. There are people who
Yeah.
cannot make that travel to live in another country. So it means that we have to fix this country to a very large extent. So
Mm.
we just keep trying. We can't give up in one cycle. We'll try again and we'll keep trying, and hopefully things
Yeah.
get better along the line.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I mean, we're really out of time. But I'm also enjoying this conversation, and this is the last, question that we're
Yes,
gonna
ma'am.
ask. But like, we see new stars every time, and aside the top five,
Yes.
people, what do you think Nigerian artist is going to really break into the international market in the next few years? I mean, the potential to the way we've really seen, this artists, the Tems and the Wheezy and the Borna has really broken into those international markets. What do you think is like the next set of guys
I
to do
think
that?
Aresta is next.
I was thinking Ayasta already broke into that.
Not on that Thames level. She's on the
Mhm.
periphery, but I think she's next. She has that intangible quality about her.
Yeah.
You see her and you see a star. Okay, yeah, maybe that's why she chose the name. So I I think she's next.
Mhm.
Who else is in that Afrobeat space? To be honest, yeah, everybody's still trying it. To be honest, I can't readily
Yeah.
think of one now. Again,
Yeah.
because the media and everybody pretty much focuses on the same guys over and over again.
Yeah.
But I think
To
she's
think.
next. I think to be safe, I think Arista, because I don't want to leave
Yeah.
out anybody that's. But yeah, I think Arista is next. She's got next.
Nice. Thank you so much,
Nah,
Jide
thank
Taiwo.
you,
Like, this was
Okpemiko, and
very interesting. I learned a
What?
lot about music. It's been mind blowing. It's been just very enlightening to really understand more about the showbiz
right,
and all of what we where we are right now and
right,
what the future is and we should also look forward
for
to.
two,
So
right.
thank you so much for joining our
Thank you guys
podcast.
for your time and for reaching out to me. I really enjoyed conversing with you, and
Yes, same
keep up
here.
the
You
good
really know
work. We
your
need.
onions.
I know. I try. I mean, it's a design flaw. I just I just try.
This is disrespectful.
It's really, really amazing.
I
And
appreciate you
hopefully we
guys.
get to do a part two or
Oh
talk
yeah,
about another
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
topic
I think
altogether.
that from
Maybe
this,
when the edits, maybe when they have the edits
Head
this
is yeah.
year.
We'll come back and speak. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll be
definitely. We
great.
really need to talk about it. Yeah, right.
Yes.
We're really looking forward to it.
I
Thank you
D,
think
any
guys.
short
last thoughts?
Yeah, I think you touched on some topics that we need to create
right?
broader topics out of.
I
So
think
yeah,
so also.
definitely looking forward to
Yeah.
having more conversation.
Thank you. I mean, final thoughts from me.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for Nigerians who live outside Nigeria and are still interested in things that go on here. You know, it's easy
Yeah.
to just get involved in your new lives and new careers elsewhere, but in as much as the Nigerian system, politics, governance, business, music, entertainment is concerned, we really, really need those of you that live outside Nigeria to be evangelists for us, you know, to amplify
We're
whatever it
trying.
is that we're trying. No, I mean, I appreciate
Well,
it.
that
And
that
that's why we're having this conversation anyway, because you do
Yeah.
your work
Yeah.
from outside Nigeria and then
Yeah.
you pay attention to a lot of things that are going on. So
Yeah.
um,
that
thank you for your
that makes
service.
yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you for that.
There's no place like home, to be honest. Like, I would rather be in Nigeria than this cold.
So I
But
hear
the Tinubu economy,
is yeah.
See, your
Tell me
where is
about
good
it.
now. Get out of
Oh yeah, you are your own.
you
We thank God for
let's
our
you.
our emperor.
let's not get into the
I'm
politics
telling
now.
you, man.
But
I'm telling you.
thank you guys so much for your
I
time, and
appreciate it.
please, everyone, don't forget to watch the last document videos, listen to our podcast, and follow us on all social media platform. Have an amazing time. Thank you. And I remain
Thank you.
Okwemiko and Ni.
And yes. Thank you.
Thank you again, Jide Taiwo. Have a great evening. Bye.
Bye guys. Cheers.